Don't worry about Article 4. Yeah, we have not gotten to Article 4 yet, so all the classes do not worry about Article 4. Maybe, go ahead.
Cover some of it?
Say what? Not the way that I'm going to do it. I mean, if you want me to test you on it, I will. Zoom in on Sophia. But if you, I don't have to do that, because we're going to go over that more a little bit later on. What else have y'all got? Maybe in chapter 1 or chapter 2, just to kind of go in order.
What's the full faith and credit?
That is Article 4. Don't worry about that. Yeah, don't worry about it. The terms that we have not gone over, obviously I cannot test you on, and as soon as I'm able to pull this up, I'll be able to tell you what to remove. But that's why I'm saying, why don't we start in chapter 1? Because we went over chapter 1, and I don't need the thing on the screen to deal with those. Yes, Chantal.
John Locke is kind of wide. What exactly do we need to know about?
John Locke, if you remember, was social contract theory. And social contract theory is that we are willing to give up some of our freedoms in order to gain some protections from government. And if you remember, John Locke was one of the ideas behind government, behind the Declaration of Independence, these kinds of things. Yeah.
You said give up some freedoms.
In order to gain some protections from government. Yes. What was the buffer zone?
Is that the 35-foot around the abortion clinic?
That was the 35-foot around the abortion clinic. That was Grandma McCullen. What was it that happened in Massachusetts? What did they do? Because this would be a good short answer question, actually, or multiple choice. Grandma McCullen in the buffer zone. What was it? Go ahead, Arona.
Well, she stood outside the abortion clinic
Yeah.
and would peacefully tell the people who are coming in to go get an abortion that I think she'd inform them of what they were doing and try and persuade them not to do it and give them other options.
What was the buffer zone, though? Everything that you said is right, but what was the buffer zone?
The buffer zone was the 35 feet that she couldn't be close to the abortion clinic.
Yeah, Massachusetts passed a law, if you remember, and what had happened was when there were protests at an abortion clinic previously, some abortion practitioners were killed. And they set up a buffer zone, a 35-foot buffer zone, so that people that protested at abortion clinics, they could not go within 35 feet. And part of it was protecting the practitioners. I suspect part of it was protecting the women and their folks that were going with them ultimately as they entered the clinic. Grandma McCullen was somebody who actually spoke in very nice and grandmotherly terms, and she actually talked dozens and dozens and dozens of women out of getting an abortion within the 35-foot buffer zone between when they began to enter and actually got to the clinic door. Now here's the thing though, was she the only person that would protest at these clinics? Okay, what else was going on?
A lot of folks were kind of just spit roasting a lot of the people who were coming in to get abortions, like, this is against God, this is against, my religious beliefs.
Well, what did the article say? Because you're right, they were spitfiring, I guess, but go ahead.
People would physically block so that the women couldn't get past without having to.
Is that what the article said?
And they would spit on them and
Now,
yell.
they did mention that there was some spitting that was going on, and they mentioned that there was yelling. Do you remember the things that they would yell? Okay, nasty stuff helps, but there could be more specifics, because remember, the more specific you are, you're going to hell, these kinds of things. So there was some religion that was to it. They had baby dolls. They had recordings of children crying. Remember these things? They would spit. And I don't think they would spit on them, but they would spit in their direction, which would be an intimidating kind of a thing. So Grandma McCullen, what was her argument as she tried to talk to these women from 35 feet away? Go ahead.
That her main argument was that, I'm not doing any of these other things that other people are doing,
Yeah.
and I'm technically expressing my freedom of speech as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So that I can speak to these people, and I'm not doing it in a harmful or aggressive tone whatsoever. So technically, I should be able to approach these people because I can't exactly approach them from the current range that you have, which is the 35.
One of the arguments that I had made, or one of the examples that I had given, and you can see Armin back there, and I'm just kind of eyeballing this, but Armin, you're probably about 35 feet away, right? Give or take.
Yeah.
All right, now I mentioned to you, could you ask somebody out from 35 feet away? I suppose you could, but would it be easier to ask somebody out if you were like 3.5 feet away? Well, probably so. And if you're dealing with abortion, Grandma McCullen is saying, yeah, I've talked people out of abortion from 35 feet, but if I am actually closer and I can look in their eyes and I don't have to use a yelling voice, I'm going to actually be more effective. Her argument is that you're taking away my free speech rights. If you remember, though, the problem is that if you give her free speech rights, who else are you giving free speech rights to?
To the other people.
Everybody else. So you either allow everybody within that 35-foot buffer zone, or you keep everybody out. What the courts say about all this?
Pretty sure they said to her no regardless.
They said, yes, you can actually go within this. And they struck down the buffer zone. And they did agree that this was a violation of her free speech rights. And the Supreme Court, and I believe this was a really high vote. Make sure that you look at that, because there were 2 articles on that page. But understand on this, the Supreme Court kind of caught some flack, because the Supreme Court has a buffer zone around it. And people were like, come on, you're going to strike down the buffer zone around an abortion clinic, but you're going to maintain a buffer zone to protect your own integrity when people protest outside of the court? That's very, very hypocritical. So make sure that you give a good look at those. But the only context that we've talked about the buffer zone is with abortion. Make sure that you're comfortable with that, okay? What other questions have you got? And I am so sorry. I don't know why this is running so dang slow. Go ahead, Ben.
So what's this about the Congress stats from chapter 1?
Don't worry about the Congress stats. Yeah, don't worry. That was just talking about some of the education and the ages and things like, and actually the percentage of demographics with gender and with race and college education. Don't worry about those. What else have you got? Go ahead, Cattell. I'm sorry.
Social contract?
Social contract we just talked about, and social contract is the idea that people are willing to give up some of their freedoms in order to gain certain protections from government, and that was John Locke. That was actually Chantal's question.
So I can just put them together?
You can put them together, yes. What else have you got? Go ahead.
Can you go over a referendum?
Referendum. Now there were 3 of these. There was referendum, there was recall, and there was initiative, okay? And all of these are examples of direct democracy. Do you remember the difference, and let me kind of preface it with this. Do you remember the difference between direct and indirect democracy?
In direct democracy, everyone votes for someone who votes on things for them, but direct democracy, everybody votes. for
Exactly. Indirect democracy is what we have. The United States is an indirect democracy because we choose people to make the decisions for us. Exactly. Direct democracy is the idea that we, the people, make the decisions ourselves. And you could argue that that's a little bit dangerous. And if you remember, when we were talking about this, I asked all the classes, what do you know about school luncheons? What do you know about road construction? What do you know about hog farming? And I got some really interesting looks, especially when we got to hogs. Well, if people don't know what they're voting on, direct democracy might be a problem. In the United States, we have an indirect democracy, but recall, referendum, and initiative are examples of direct democracy. And you asked about a...
Referendum.
Okay. Yeah, that one. Okay. I don't know if I could say that. I would try to. Well, what is a referendum? Anybody?
It's a
Modification
modification of a law.
of a law.
Or
Retraction
retraction.
of a law.
I wrote down the thing, I
Okay, referendum. Maybe let's start with the easy one. Do y'all remember what an initiative was? Because I asked all the classes, if you wanted to get a law passed, what would you do? Go ahead, Shannon.
It's a Stockton type initiative where you can write your own bill, and if you get enough signatures from registered voters, then you can put it on the ballot.
Yes. An initiative is where a citizen or a group of citizens write a bill, and then they get it, they collect signatures from registered voters in the area, and then that bill will actually get added onto the next election. So people can vote yes or no. And if a majority of people vote yes, then that bill becomes a law. Under an initiative, and think about it like this. People wrote it, people collected the signatures, it got put on the ballot, and then people voting passed it. The governor can't veto it, the legislature cannot revoke it. This is a really good example of direct democracy. Okay, referendum is a little bit different than that. and I asked all the classes, if there was an issue that was 50-50, which side would you pick? Jasmine, if an issue was 50-50, which side would you pick?
Not sure.
Not sure. Why?
Because they're equal.
Because they're really close. I mean, if it's 50-50, you're going to upset people, as many people as you help, if it's that close, basically. And that's dangerous when you're talking about an election or getting reelected. This is where referendum comes in. In a referendum, a legislature will pass a referendum that is a bill, effectively. But it doesn't become law. It ends up on the ballot. So if you remember with an initiative, people write it, the people collect the signatures, it goes on the ballot. With a referendum, the legislature writes it. They put it on the ballot, and then the people can either vote yes or they can vote no. And remember what Jasmine said. Jasmine said if it's 50-50, it's too close, I don't want to touch this. Well, as a politician, if you empower the people when it's 50-50 to vote yes or to vote no, you can't lose because they made the decision. I empowered you. I didn't make the wrong decision. You made the right decision. I can take credit for it. You made the wrong decision. I can help you fix it. But it's not my fault. This is you. So that's the direct democracy piece. Do you remember what a recall was? Go ahead.
It's kind of the same idea as the initiative. It's like all the states that come, people can get an elected official removed from office if I think it's about like the same process. They just have to get enough votes for it, but they can do it themselves without having to involve any other politician.
That's what it is. Understand on this. When you have a recall, an elected official may not have broken the law, but an elected official, now it comes up, an elected official may have made some wrong decisions. And if you don't like the decisions that the elected official has made, you can actually introduce a recall petition. And in this, you would actually propose that a state or local official be recalled or removed from elected office. Now, the trick on this is that once you do this, you've got to go out and collect signatures from registered voters. And then when this is all verified by the Board of Elections, they will then basically have almost a fairly immediate election where you vote, yes, I want the person recalled, or no, I don't. If you vote no, I don't want the person recalled or removed from office, you're done. But if you vote yes, then that means that you have got to pick one of the other candidates that are on the ballot. And do you remember the election that we talked about that was dealing with a recall?
The California law with the governor.
California governor. They actually removed Gray Davis from office and replaced Gray Davis with whom? Arnold Schwarzenegger, yeah. And on that, understand, and I showed you that ballot, and the ballot said, do you want Gray Davis removed or recalled from office? And if you answer yes, then you pick somebody to replace him. If you answer no, then you're done. And Schwarzenegger won that way. There is no federal recall, but there is for state and local elections, and that's a really good example of direct democracy. Do you remember some of the people that ran?
Porn star, a butcher, a businessman. Some of the examples I can.
Porn star, a butcher. Gary Coleman ran, the actor. Richard Simmons, who may have may not been the exercise guy. Who was it? Mary Carey Cook, the porn star. Angeline, the exotic dancer. And you see, the thing of this is that in a recall election, anybody can go collect the signatures. They just need to get a percentage of signatures of registered voters, and they can end up on the ballot, and they can run to be the governor. There was a sumo wrestler, if you remember. There were a lot of different people. What else have you got as far as questions? And now that this has finally come up, I've got the terms up here. Any other terms from Chapter 1 that you wanted to take a look at?
Let's see.
And eventually, this really is going to come up. Remember 15 minutes, Tristan. Please.
McCullen versus Coatley.
That was the Grandma McCullen case.
Oh,
That's already on
okay.
film.
Okay.
What else have you got from Chapter 1?
Faith versus skepticism.
You know, that's not on the study guide, so I'm not going to worry about that one. What else have you got from, go ahead, Cattell. Order. We talked about freedom and order, right? You remember what the difference was between freedom and order? I think the example that I had given of freedom and order was freedom is the idea that there